Hello, hi, my name is Karin Devro and welcome to the first book review for 2026. I love to read. To know me is to know that I love to read, and it is something that growing up, when times were hard, when I felt my loneliest after my father passed away in 1997, I really threw myself into the world of fiction and non-fiction. And through the years, it has come and gone in terms of reading, but I've always stuck through to it, and I'm back. I think last year I had read 12 books. I wrote it down somewhere. I need to find that book. I read 12 books, and I'm very proud of myself for that. So, the first book for 2026 is Bear by Jackie Phamotse. What? You're Jackie. What a read. It is set in Johannesburg, well, in Gauteng and Bloemfontein, between the two, and then the bulk of it in Sandton. And that means there's a lot of money, there's a lot of sex, there's a lot of power, there's a lot of manipulation of young women. I am born and raised in Johannesburg, and I can tell you a lot about what people read, whether it's fiction or non-fiction, about the city is most likely 9 out of 10 times very, very true. In fact, I feel as if it doesn't really touch on just how bad and how the underbelly of this very, very shiny city can swallow in the best of us. Some of us were raised there, and Johannesburg did what Johannesburg did, you know? So you can only imagine people that come from smaller cities, smaller towns, from all over the country, because Johannesburg is built on migrant labor. So a lot of people are not from, or that is not home. But with that being said, let's jump straight into it. So the book follows Tresure, right? And we get a little bit of insight into Tresure's early life, her childhood, growing up with her siblings and her father and her mother. The father is cold. He is the kind of man, as an African father does, that provides but not much else. Her mother is obviously the foundation of Tato, is the foundation of the entire family, and is the one that keeps it together. However, her husband is not a kind man. He is cruel to his wife. He is very harsh to his wife. He's very jealous. And very early on, before she's even 7 or 8 years old, there's this incident that takes place, and it really impacts Tresure just in terms of the scales falling off her eyes for how cruel. Father basically comes on one night and does shoot their mom in front of them, their 4 kids. She's got an older sibling and she had 2 younger siblings. So we get a bit of an insight into her younger life, and she's more on the outskirts of Johannesburg. So I would say Western area. I would even say there was a bit of a Northwest situation there. But then goes to school, and she's very bright. She gets along with her peers. A lot of people can tell that this girl has got something there between the ears, you know what I mean? And Tresure then has to start grade 8, and she gets to go to boarding school in Bloemfontein. Oh, child. She gets to boarding school and she completely just flourishes. She's got a good group of friends. She partakes in all kinds of activities. Just a beautifully well-rounded Black child that's been given this opportunity to go to a really good school. All the while, when she has to travel home to go and visit, she's in a taxi, and she doesn't really have friends back home because her parents felt as if this is why they had siblings, right? So they were each other's friends. But she had a little crush here and there, and they kind of, uncover and explore that. And then roundabout at the age of about 15, we finally hit one of the hardest moments in this book. I think it's about 4 pages. The scene that takes place over multiple hours is about 4 pages long, and it is hands down one of the hardest things I've had to read. I'm not gonna lie, yeah, it's a lot. And this is the gang rape scene. And it was a lot. That's all I can say. I feel as if my heart goes out to any woman that has ever had to and been in a situation where she was sexually assaulted or she was raped, because what that could potentially just do to your soul, just the vulgarity and the brutality, the absolute brutality of what that does. And she was 15 years old. I don't want to give it away, but it was a hard one, a very real one. And this completely changes Tresure, and she goes back to school, and she's different, and everybody can tell that she's different, and she obviously has to, because she was drugged, there's only so much of that she remembers, but it was very, very brutal, very, very brutal, and we kind of go through that, and Jackie takes us through what that can mentally do, you know, to a young girl, but she picks up the pieces eventually, and she completes school, and then things at home are not going too well. And I think eventually her mom gets very, very sick and has to move to the grandparents, her grandparents, who are, you know, elderly themselves. And her father at some point picks up a girlfriend. I think she's about 17, 18 years old at this point. And basically Tresure has had enough. She's had enough of the abuse. She's had enough of his coldness, his harshness, the fact that her mother's been treated so horribly. She is so sick. And so Tresure decides she's going to go to Johannesburg. She's going to take a gap year, and she is going to go to Johannesburg. At this point, she had a best friend at boarding school, Lintley. And she reaches out to Lintley at this point, who is now currently studying at Wits. And she's living in Brandfontein. Now the book starts to get now lit, right? Because here's this beautiful gazelle-like, the way Jackie describes Tresure, she's just this beautiful, elongated gazelle that's so unaware. You know, like when they say like she has doe eyes and she's so innocent. She doesn't even realize how beautiful she is with this luscious dark skin, just everything. And she gets to Johannesburg. And when she moves in, Lita's got this cute apartment in Braamfontein. She's studying, and she's got this boyfriend, Paul. And Paul is a banker. Paul now, this is because I finished the book that I'm saying this. And Litle is dating Paul, but Paul is a banker and high flying. She has got Gucci shoes. So when Tresure walks into this apartment for the first time, and she takes a taxi with her 2 bags after leaving home, and she walks into this apartment, and it's just these shoes, and she's got this exquisite wine, and Litle is so excited to have a friend, and she's like, girl, let's do this. Let's take this gap year. I'm studying. You can live with me. Do the modeling thing. I think you got a bright future. You in Johannesburg. Let's do this. And they go clubbing, and they're going out to Sandton on their first night out, because now Paul has got a dinner. She meets Paul, and Paul says, guys, ladies, tomorrow we have this dinner we have to go for. There's a lot of high-flying politicians and businessmen. Blah, blah, blah. You'll know where I'm going with this. So the girlies are given a credit card. They dropped off at Sandton City, Nelson Mandela Square, Diamond Walk to be specific. If you know, you know. They drop them off, and the girlies go shopping. It's giving shoes at Preview. Okay? It's giving walking into Louis Vuitton. They got evening dresses. Then it's off to the salon in Bramley. Weaves, 16, 17-inch weaves to the flow, baby. To their bums, gets her makeup done and whatever. When he picks them up in his brand new, is it an Aston Martin? Because he's not our young banker, mostly his boyfriend, Paul. She goes to this dinner, guys, and this is where she meets Tim Morgan. You know when they tell you there's a moment that people will come into your life and they will irrevocably change the entire trajectory of whatever your path was supposed to be. At this point, you know, she's modeling, she starts to model, and she doesn't really take much of it, and she has interaction with Tim. They go home. Paul comes a couple of days later and he comes with this gift for her. And it's this, this rare Swarovski egg, right? That's like worth 50, 60,000. And Paul's like, this is for you. And she's like, huh? And Paul goes, Timmy's downstairs. And she's like, anyway, long story short, we now go into this whirlwind romance. It's safari getaways, it's spa treatments, it's sitting in the best restaurants, just shopping. He buys her a car, he gets an apartment. It's giving, right? And he moves her to Melrose, by the way. If you know, you know. At this point, Tresure is modeling. She's been seen on TV. She's really got a good career going for her. And there's this photographer that she meets. And this photographer, unfortunately, it's another incident. And once again, Tresure is violated and her trust is broken in the worst way possibly, through a rape. And the reason why this book is not so far off is because women experience multiple sexual assaults and rapes in their lifetime. Like, do you understand? It's not where you say this is that once-off traumatic event. When you just think you have put the pieces together. I had to be a woman. To be a black woman. So he does this thing, and through all of this, Tim then sweeps in. I think it's for about 6 months. He's doing this. They're not sleeping together. They're holding hands. They just punky, kissing on the lips, not even tongue. And there's this whole whirlwind that happens. And then eventually she does give herself to him. Hi, guys. Yo. This man has got depraved needs, and Tresure now starts to realize that money comes at a cost and that nothing is for free. And it really unfolds into really seeing the dark side of politics and business and golfing trips and gentlemen clubs, and how even young men in Johannesburg, most straight facing, have girlfriends, have wives. And it gets to the point where eventually Paul comes to her. It gets uncovered that this hockey club that they have is actually a place where there is a rotation. It's a sex trafficking ring where they get young girls to sleep with these men. Not all of them are girlfriends. They get young men to sleep with their wives to keep them entertained so they can control the narrative and control who their wives are with, because their wives know what they're doing when they go away on these trips and when they are working late. So they get these young boys to sleep with them, and they sleep with these young boys themselves. Interpol. I don't want to give it away. I believe the message of the book stands. And on page 215, Jackie says, to many families who have lost their daughters in the name of love, be brave enough to tell their stories and teach the new generation differently. No form of abusive behavior is okay. Equally, women should guard themselves against the lure of materialism for its own sake. And most importantly, South Africans should take stock of the dark side of the freedom their parents fought for with such tenacity. Freedom without a moral sense is no freedom at all. It is a dark and deadly cul-de-sac. Woman, find your voice and live within your power. You are enough. Get yourself. It was a good one. Let's go.